Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with my Panda palette contenders for 2024. It is crazy to think that it's almost 2024, or at least it's coming close. Yeah, I can't believe it. It feels crazy because I feel like we just started 2023. Well, maybe not just started, but yeah, it does definitely not feel like we're getting close to the next year. And 2024 just sounds crazy. But today, like I said, I'm here with my Panda palette contenders for next year. I do have 5 different palettes. Well, technically I have 6 that I have as contenders for the year. And I do want you guys to let me know what you think down below. Which palette do you think would be most exciting to watch? Which one is your favorite? Let me know down below. Also, I will be posting a poll here on my YouTube in my community tab. I think basically the same time when I post this video with my different options. So please go ahead and vote there as well, because I think from there, and also like a little bit from the comments, I will make my final decision. So yeah, go ahead and vote there. But let's just jump into the first palette. But before I do that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So majority of the palettes that I have as contenders come from one brand, and that is Anastasia. The reason why is because some of my oldest palettes are from this brand, and I just really want to focus on them moving forward. So first up, we do have an oldie but a goodie. This is probably the one that I originally thought of my Panda palette before I started like brainstorming what else I could pan. Now I'm kind of split between all of them, but this is the original one that I thought I would pan next year, and that is the Soft Glam palette. This palette is a beautiful kind of neutral toned. It's slightly rosy leaning, but it also has a lot of warm tones, which I think would be really great as a Panda palette, because you would have different options. I have learned this year that even though I love wearing colors, panning a colorful palette, at least like a fully colorful palette, isn't for me, because it makes me a bit too distracted, because I don't wear those kind of colors every single day. This year's Panda palette has been a bit of a fail for me, but that's okay. I've been focusing on other projects, and I'm really happy overall with my panning of eyeshadows this year. Maybe just not in my Panda palette. I think that's probably my biggest neglected product this year, but that is okay. But because of that, I think a palette like this would be really, really good, because again, you have such a big variety of shades. You do have loads of mattes, which, you know, it does take a longer time for me to pan mattes, but I have also panned Modern Renaissance in the past, and that one has even more mattes, and I almost completed that in 1 year. In here, the only shade I would really be worried about to finish would be the black, but even if I don't finish that, that's not the end of the world. Otherwise, I think I'm going to enjoy panning most of the shades. The shimmers in here aren't the most impactful anymore, especially Glistening, Fairy, and Rose Pink right here. Those aren't the most like impactful anymore. They're quite powdery, but I could easily use this palette in collaboration with my indie shadows, and even if I use those shimmers, I could top like a topper shade on top of them if I wanted a bit more impact. So I think this one is a really, really good contender, and the more I'm talking about it, I'm really, really leaning towards this one. But again, I do want to hear your feedback, but let's move on to the second palette. So like I said, I do have 2 more palettes from Anastasia. The next one is the Novena palette. This is definitely my favorite palette from the brand. I absolutely love this one. I love the color story. I love the kind of rosy pink kind of undertones. There's 1 row of mattes, 1 row of shimmers, and the shimmers in here are absolutely amazing. It's some of the best that I've tried from Anastasia. I would kind of be upset to have this one out of my collection like after a year of panning it, but I also want to get my kind of love towards this palette shown. Again, the only shade I would really be worried about panning would be Drama, because it's like a black and purple. But I don't think that would be too much of an issue, and it is also a shimmer, so I think I could easily get through that one. Another one that I might struggle a little bit with is the shade Soul, because that is like a kind of purplish undertone shade. It's like a bluish purple, which doesn't always look the best with my skin tone, but you know, I think I should be able to get through it anyway in a year. So this is the second contender. Again, this one is a little bit newer than the Soft Glam, and I feel like the formula is still good, but I don't want the formula in here to go bad, because again, it is one of my favorites, at least my favorites from Anastasia. So yeah, this is definitely one that I would love. I would really enjoy panning this one. It does have more shimmers, which means I should probably be able to get through it as well. Because again, I pan shimmers quicker than I pan mattes. Also, as you can see, I do have a lot of pans in this palette already, which obviously helps when it comes to panning the palette completely. I do have more pans than I do in the Soft Glam. In the Soft Glam, I do have a couple too, but not as many as I do in the Novena. So that is the second contender. It's definitely slightly more colorful than the Soft Glam, but I would still call it a neutral palette, and I think it would still be really, really easy to reach for. So that is the second palette that I'm currently considering for my Pan palette. Then the final Anastasia palette that I am considering at the moment is my Arissi palette. This one is slightly larger. This one has, is it 16 shades? Yeah, 16 shades. 2 of them are pressed glitters though, which I don't really like those pressed glitters very much, but you know, I could always use them on my nails, things like that, to finish them off if I don't enjoy them on my eyes. This one has slightly more shimmers than it does mattes. The mattes are like down here, then there's like more shimmers here. There's also a satin shade right there. I guess like if you exclude the satin and the pressed glitters, there's just one more shimmer than it is mattes, but overall it's slightly more shimmer heavy, which means that it's easier for me to reach for again because I do pan shimmers faster than mattes. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but this one does have a couple of shades that are a bit more colorful. You have the shade Arissi as well as the shade Leo, which are obviously quite colorful, but since there is only 2 quite colorful shades, I think that would still be fine. I guess the only thing is there's a lot of deepness over here. Like the black shade obviously again would be a bit of a struggle for me. Maybe even the shade Hugo would be, I don't know, it would be a bit difficult to pan, I think, especially because you also have these 2 dipping up shades, which I think these 2 I would be more inclined to reach for, but these 2 darker ones would be a bit harder to pan. You also do have these 2 shades here, which are very, very similar, but it is an easy shade for me to reach for. However, I think that would be maybe a bit of a concern that it's like a few shades that are overlapping. But yeah, this is the next palette that I am considering. This is probably the one out of the Anastasia palettes that I am the least excited about to pan. Actually, no, it's hard because I guess this is the last one that I considered from the Anastasia palettes, but I'm also a bit torn about panning the Novena palette because it is one that I love. I mean, I love this one too, but I feel like the Novena palette I would want to keep in my collection for longer, whereas I'm kind of happy to part with other 2 once they're finished. However, you know, if I pan a Novena for a year, I might feel like I've got my fix of Novena and it's okay to let it go. But I don't know. This is definitely one that I would really enjoy panning because I love the palette, but I don't think I would miss it when it's gone. So that is the next one. Also, it might be worth noting that this one has one of my favorite mainstream shimmers, which is the shade here, Barb. I love that one so, so much. So I would for sure love using that shade. So before we move on to the next 2 official palettes, I do have a bonus palette that I wanted to consider. This was originally on my list. And honestly, the main reason why I took this one out is because I wanted even 5 to share with you. And I did have 6 originally. This one here, I did decide to take out of the running because it is a lot newer than the rest, and that is the Red Dragon palette from Odin's Eye. I've only really had this one for not even 2 years yet, so it is newer, much newer than some of the other palettes. I mean, the Soft Glam palette is the oldest, and I know I got that one in 2018. I might even got a Novena in 2018 actually, but the end of 2018, and I definitely got, actually maybe even got Soft Glam almost when it was released, I think, which might have been early 2018. I think that was when it was. It is definitely newer than Novena, but like I'm saying, those palettes are 2018, 2019 old. I think the Arissi is from 2020, and this one here is from 2021. And that is why I decided to take this one out of the running, because, you know, I could always pan this one the year after next, so 2025, which again sounds crazy. But since it is a bit newer, I'm not too worried about the formula going bad or anything like that, and I do rather get one of my older palettes out. But if for some reason you would love to see this palette, please let me know down below and I might bring it back into consideration. But for now, this is just an honorable mention, and I might pan this one in the future, but just not next year. So let's bring back to the next palette, and the next palette comes from Colourpop. I don't have very many Colourpop palettes left in my collection. I only have 5 or 6, I think. But this one here is definitely one that I feel like I would be comfortable panning for a full year, and that is the Going Coconuts palette. Again, the reason why I would be happy to pan this one for a full year is because it is neutral. You can see the color story here. This one again isn't as old, but I do think this one I brought in like 2019, possibly. I think something like that. So it's getting up there in age, maybe 2020. No, I think 2019. So again, it is getting up there in age. It is a beautiful palette. I love the undertones in here. And this one is definitely reminiscent of the new Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I think if I pan this one, I could allow myself to buy that one as a replacement and have a bit of a fancier version of this palette, which is honestly also one of the reasons why I want to pan this one. Colourpop can be quite hard to get through, and there is like 6 mattes in here. One of them has like glitters in it, so I know that one's gonna go a bit faster because usually they are a bit more powdery when they have the glitters in them. But it does have like 5 traditional mattes, and they're all quite hard pressed. So I know this one would be a bit of a struggle to maybe get through all of the mattes, but I'm up for the challenge. And overall, it's only 9 shades. It's less shades than some of the other palettes. Also, I'm interested to know, can I see on here? So because I know the formula is a bit harder in this one, I just wanted to, for science, calculate how many grams are in this palette, and it is 8.1 grams in here according to the back, and I currently have 2 pans in here. So, you know, I have already used up a little bit of the palette, and I mean, obviously the shades as well. That doesn't have pan, has some use on it too, but yeah, 8.1 grams in here, advertised as least. And then I just take the Sock Glam for comparison because I feel like this is the palette that I could easily get through, and also again, it is similar to the Modern Renaissance, which I have finished up. And in here, there is 10.36 grams. So there's actually more product in here than it is in the Colourpop palette, which gives me a little bit of hope, even though the formula is harder to get through and the pans are also harder to get through. So I think it's definitely feasible for me to get through this palette. And especially because of the shades being so wearable, I think you can easily like use this palette. There's nothing really in here that I am worried about finishing like there is in some of the other palettes. Like there's no black, there's no really like shade that I wouldn't use. And yes, there is a deep shade here, but it's like a deep brown, and I think you can get through a deep brown in a year. There's also like a setting shade, which is really easy to get through. This highlighting shade here, I'm sure I will get through too. I mean, there's a lot of transition shades which I can use every single day. And also there's like different undertones. There's more of a cool tone one and more of a warm toned one. I love this kind of reddish brown. I would love to play around with that one. And then like the sequin shade isn't my favorite, but I feel like I would be able to get through that quicker because again, the formula of those ones are usually a bit more powdery. And then these 2 shimmers here, I would love to wear. I think you can wear them like every single day. And again, if I want them a bit more impactful, I can top them with my Indie shimmers. Or again, I can just pair these mattes with my Indie shimmers because again, it is more matte heavy, which is something that I would really enjoy. So that is my next contender. Let me know what you think of that one. I think it would be quite a fun challenge to take on a Colourpop palette as a Panda palette, especially because I have panned an Anastasia palette in the past. So I think those other 3 might not be as fun for you guys. But again, let me know your feedback down below on which one you think would be best. Then the last palette that I'm considering for a Panda palette is a little bit of a different one. And that is this here, basically. It is, or like, well, specifically not this one, but it is a magnetic palette of singles. I have not yet picked out the singles that I would want to pan, but I think I would go through my collection, and I did do a couple months ago a duping out my single collection video, and I went through like eyeshadows that I have that are dupes. So I think some of those would definitely be featured, like kind of my indie shadows, and then I think also something that I just want to get out. So I do not have that set up yet, but I have like a single palette that I did in my palette 5000 tag. Is that what it's called? I think so. The one by Chic Geek. I created like my perfect eyeshadow palette with single, and I still have it here. So this is the palette, and I would do something like this. Obviously, I wouldn't do these exact shades. I also don't think I would do my Cleon eyeshadows because I do have all of my Cleon eyeshadows. Like I do have the full collection. I'm not ready to start panning those yet. But I would do kind of like similar layout. I think I would do a couple mattes, and then I would do a lot of like shimmers. Again, I haven't decided how many exactly, but I would for sure pan my indie shimmers. I think I would include like my pastel roses because I know that formula doesn't hold like for too long, and some of them are getting older in my collection, so for sure like include some of those. I think definitely like maybe a Sydney Grey shade. I would also do even maybe Terra Moons. We'll see. But I would love to do something like that. Of course, I think I would maybe include like some of my Colourpop the potted mattes too. And then maybe like a couple other shades like the potted shades, things like that. But it would be a mix of things like this. Again, you would have to see, but I think I might, like, I know for a fact that I have a dupe of this shade here, which is one of my favorites. This is Terra Moon's Starlight. I have a dupe of this from Pastel Roses. I do think I would include that, for example, because I love that shade so much, but I don't need two of them in my collection, and I would love so much to pan one of those shadows in a year. Also maybe like something like this. This is from the Pastel Roses, which is Starburst. I think maybe even this one I would include, but I know I have a lot of similar shades like this. So something like that. Again, I haven't made it out yet, so I know it's not as fun, but I could also do like a video picking out the singles for my Panda palette in that case, if you're interested in this kind of concept. I don't know what the interest would be like in panning like singles like this. I don't know if, I used to have a feeling that people would enjoy it as much as a set palette, but I know for a fact that I would enjoy it, and I have so many beautiful singles in my collection that I would absolutely love working on for a year. So that would be my last option for Panda palettes. So just to recap, we have the 5 different options, which is the Soft Glam palette, we have the Norvina palette, we have the Arissi palette, all of those are from Anastasia. Then we have the Going Coconut palette from Colourpop. And lastly, like a custom singles palette. So those are the 5 options that I have for Panda palette. Leave me your thoughts and feelings down below. And again, I have posted a community post with the 5 different options. So please go and vote there. I honestly haven't really made up my mind at all. I thought I had, but when I picked these out, I think I would be so excited to work on any of these. Like I would love to work on a Soft Glam. I would love to work on a Novena because I love that palette. I would love to work under Arissi because there's so many beautiful shades in there. And the Gone Coconut palette I think would be absolutely perfect to work on and pair with my indie shadows. And then my singles palette, I would have an absolute blast on just enjoying my singles, like my beautiful indie singles for a year. So let me know your thoughts down below. And otherwise, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are. And I will catch you in my next one. Bye, guys.